Okay, here we are. Just started recording.
Perfect.
And there you are, Meegs.
Hi, buddy.
It's so good to see you. Holy
I know,
shit.
I'm excited. It's been a long time. I think the last time I sat down with you in
God,
person was at a bar in Calgary.
that could be so. I was in a lot of bars in Calgary.
I was visiting because I was living in Asia at the time. Do you remember? And I brought you
Yeah.
back. I believe, as a souvenir, I brought back Asian porn for you.
Well, of course you did. Why wouldn't you? So,
Yeah, it
but
was like
it's been a long
what?
time. Like that probably was, I don't know, 17,
Oh,
18 years ago, maybe, or something like that. It's been a long, long time because I moved to Calgary in 2000. And then
yep,
you were in Taiwan, I believe,
yep. For
for
6 years, I stayed
6
there.
years. Okay.
Yeah.
So, maybe a little bit later than that. It's hard to say. Maybe. I'm just thinking about 2003 or 2004. Maybe
Yep.
could have been it. It's
I
been a
think
long
so. I
time.
think it was like around 2003.
Okay. Good. Yes. Yeah. I was wondering that. That's the best part about this thing. Is like when was the last time I seen all these people again? So
Yeah.
I've been doing these podcasts. I've done. You're number 7, and I have people from different walks of my life, parts of my journey, which is kind of the fun part of it. And
I bet.
doing a lot of reminiscing and thinking about the people as I kind of connect with them. Man, and they have stories to tell. I know you have a story to tell um, that you
Which
could probably share
which
with us.
one?
I know you have a few. Keep waiting for the book to come out because I mean,
Yeah.
first on the
oh, it's
list to buy it.
oh, it's coming.
So I keep reminiscing about that. Then I think, when's the last time I've seen all these people? So you had heard my conversation with Tom Yu,
Yep.
which is
I've
which is
tuned into a
awesome.
few of your podcasts.
Oh, you're the best.
Yeah.
Such a
No,
friend.
it's good. The funny thing is that when you were doing your live Facebook shows, I'm actually super into podcasts. So I was just on my daily walk listening to a podcast.
Ah, okay, yeah,
And so I'm super into
good.
them. And I remember thinking, I was actually going to call you in the summer and be like, buddy, you should start a podcast. I've always said that about you. I don't know if you remember this. You came in for
Uh,
our orientation interview and you were talking away. And then as soon as you left, and I was like, oh my God, that was Lloyd Dobler.
Yeah, I know we had a good connection right from the start. It was funny too. Like,
Yeah.
it was like a last minute whim to apply because you were the co-coordinator, I guess is the term, or
Yep.
whatever
Yep.
it was for the orientation. And orientation was for first year students. They would come around and we would give them lessons and take them on tours. And it was
Yep.
a good introduction for a lot of first year students in the summer prior to their first year of university. And
Yes.
you were, how many years did you do that? Just 1997, or did you
You know
do
what?
orientation before that, or what?
So I had been an orientation leader right after my first year of university. And then I was going into my second year
Okay.
and, no, I was going into my third year and I
Yeah.
applied for the job and got the job. And I think it was that summer that I was diagnosed with leukemia. So
It was.
it was actually during an orientation, I got a message to call my doctor's office and I called and I had all these first year students there and I got this phone call and they're like,
Jesus.
yeah, we just wanted to let you know that your results came back and turns out you've got, at the time they actually didn't have the diagnosis correct, but they were like, oh, you have Hodgkin's disease.
Okay.
Which of course I was dating a guy at the time who was really into hockey and his first response was, that's okay. That's okay. Mario Lemieux had
Lemieux.
that. Mario Lemieux had that. You're going to be fine.
He came back and played too, right? Like, in fact, it was the year before that. So it was 96. He had come back to play. So it was not that long before that
Yeah.
occurred. So he was
Yes.
done and then he came back. So, but
Yeah.
I
And
remember
then it
that, but
turned out,
it seemed like a lot longer because there was a lot of stuff that happened that summer.
yes.
And to me, it just sort of seemed like, I don't know, like a year later, but it wasn't because I remember it happened. It was later on in orientation, but.
Yeah. It was right at the end of the summer. Yeah. So then unfortunately I couldn't continue. I had to take a year off university And then when I came back, they had given the, different coordinator had come on, and the job didn't work out, which was actually a blessing in disguise. I was pretty hurt at the time, but what are you going to do? Moved on and got some other great experience working for the Meewasin Valley Authority. I was like putting on the dragon boat races. So it was a bit of a step up, I think, in terms of, so I was doing stuff like that. So yeah, it was pretty fun. But it was a crazy, crazy journey.
Let's talk about orientation first, because that was a blast. That was the first summer I ever spent right in Saskatoon. And the first year, I actually had a car accident a couple years before that and had surgery. And so because of the surgery that I had,
Couldn't go tree planting.
I didn't go tree planting. And then I also had a scar. So what I did was I applied for compensation from SGI, and they gave me a small amount of compensation for lost wages from tree planting that I would normally have made. But
that's pretty good.
The scar I had, they gave me like $20,000 for the scar that I had on it. So there you go. That's a student loan for you. So that's
totally.
So instead of that summer working, what I did, I worked on the farm for a bit. Then I moved to Saskatoon, and then I took some classes, and I just had the best summer of my life. It was so much fun. And we did orientation, and Vern Bell, who's the other coordinator, who's another absolute beauty of a person. You guys hired me up, and I remember because I think all the volunteers had to do maybe 2 week-long sessions, maybe, or something like that. We got compensated for that many sessions, or something like that. But I did every single one. So I did almost all of them for free. That's what I did.
Oh my God, that's the best. I remember though, you had the best stories. The thing is, we didn't have a lot of people. We didn't have a lot of people who lived in res.
Okay.
But you had lived in res, so you could actually give these res tours. And I went one time because I was like, I want to check this out too. And I was thinking of this story. It came back to me out of nowhere.
I have stories.
One story. Yeah, but I remember you guys were like, the funny thing is, like, it came back to me. I was going up some stairs the other day, and I remembered, all of a sudden I had a flashback of you telling the story of the one guy at orientation who had fallen. And when you guys gave the tour, you're like, that's the dent mark from where his teeth hit the stairs. And
I wasn't even making that up. I was right there when that occurred, and I saw it.
God. Oh my
Actually,
God.
no, that's not right. I didn't see it. I was facing the other way. So he fell right behind me. And I was talking to one of our RAs, and his eyes heard me woof. Well, I went down the stairs, first of all, and there he was hanging over the edge. And then I'm like, hey, how you doing? And then I just kept, and the RAs there talking, so I was talking to the RA. And then all his eyes his eyes like this, holy cow. And he had literally fallen face first, hit his teeth.
Oh my God.
Lost his teeth. So, I got a good story about his teeth,
I saw a set of stairs like that in Vancouver, and I was like, I wonder if somebody lost their teeth on this.
It was just, oh my God, crazy.
No,
but it's a true story.
Now that I'm a parent, though, I'm like, oh my God, that's a terrible story.
I don't know how he didn't break his neck. Well, he was pretty wasted, so maybe that made him limp.
Maybe it was a blessing. Yeah, exactly. He was limp and took the fall.
So there was, but I remember the crew though that we had, and there was just a really good, solid crew of people on that orientation. And it might be the nature of the job, being more outgoing, people who want to help, very helpful people, social people that you would get in there, and you guys obviously recruited people that you thought were good.
One thing we did that year, which was a bit different, was Corey Exner was our boss.
Right. Because he would have done. Right.
Yeah, and we really wanted to have like a good representation across the university. So we emailed out all of the student represented, like the representation councils, I guess, like
student councils. Sure.
Yeah, the different student councils, and tried to get people from as much of the university as what we could represented, so that any student coming in, so any student coming in, no matter where they were going, they would have somebody who they could, connect with and learn from, and have an expertise in that particular area of the school, etc. And of course, Corey had been around for so long because he was the president there for 2 years. Yeah. And so he knew the university like inside and out, and like even his own stories of the history of the university. He knew so much at the time that he was able to really add
Yeah.
value to the program. So to be honest with you, I think we did a great job of, we actually went on a tour as well. We went and checked out some of the other universities to see what they were doing for orientations as well, to
Wow.
make sure that we were, so we actually really put a lot of effort into making it as good as what we could, and taking it a step further than what it had done the year before. So that was kind of a nice thing to be a part of as well.
Yeah, it was great. I really, well, obviously if I'm volunteering doing it, I'm obviously having a good time. And the university, Saskatoon's a great place to be in the summertime. And the university is a beautiful place to be as well, too. It's a gorgeous campus. And it's actually my favorite time of the year is in the summertime when all the flowers are out and the bowl is looking really super. And, the buildings are, it's a beautiful campus. It's better than most campuses in the country,
Actually, to be honest, I used to sell textbooks out here. I work for a publishing company.
I knew that,
So my job for a while in British Columbia was to go around to different universities, and I totally thought the same thing. I was like, these are nice. UBC is pretty nice. But I was like, you know what? Saskatoon, that campus is beautiful. Like when you compare what's out here to what we went to, I was like, this is a great place.
I think you could put it against any university in the country. I don't know if it's the best, but it's up there. And, they made us, well, since the 60s, they made an effort to have some sort of architectural consistency with the old Gothic and the Manitoba fieldstone limestone.
Yeah.
Which I used to point out these lines to these kids on the sides of the buildings. And that's from the flood of 1932. Really? Yeah, it was. Just walking by, so this is what happened there. Really? That's cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so sorry about that. I kind of probably screwed up.
Embellished a few things there.
A little bit.
But it sounded good.
What's
That's
the
all
point
that
of
matters.
giving a tour if people have nothing to remember it by? I don't understand that. So just make shit up. You know, make up a myth, and maybe you can hear some of the myths later on.
Actually,
I probably should have been telling too many drinking stories, but
I think you were pretty good. I think the only one was that the dorm tour. Maybe you got a little sidetracked there because there was, but that's what they want to hear. They want to know they're going to some parties.
Well, you'd be happy to know I left out some of the better stories.
Yeah. That and Rob Troop.
Trooper.
That guy alone could tell a lot of stories.
We were kind of friends before that. That was somewhere we became pretty tight. And then I moved in with him in September. So him and Smitty, we lived together that year, and that was the best year. Well, it was pretty wild, pretty strange, wild year living with Rob.
Oh my God. I have to tell you, Rob so Rob and I actually were roommates for a short period of time as well in Taiwan.
Yes. Of course you were, yes.
And, but I have to tell you, so the year that I was going through chemo treatments, Rob would come over to the hospital and he'd smoke up before he came in. And he'd hang out for hours. And I was pretty out of it because I was on painkillers and things like this, right? And I'd kind of drift in and out of consciousness, and Rob would still be there talking away. and then at one point I remember he's like, oh man, I would get the munchies. He's like, and they'd come in and they'd bring your lunch, and I'd be like, hey, you gonna eat this? And so he'd be eating my lunch.
I wonder if he went over there a few times and went to the wrong room and had no idea. That could be possible too. Probably kept doing it after you're out of the hospital.
But even at that time, I was like, dude, you have got to write a book because your stories are hilarious. And nobody will believe these are true.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of a funny thing when you're on the students union, which I found out a couple years later, that you were expected to write sort of year-end reports. And also whenever you went on trips, you wrote a report about it. You had to report back to council, provide a written report, and then give a verbal oral presentation to council. And so his ones were, and they kept all the reports, and they're all in a record. So if you go to the Students' Union office today, look in 96, 97, or 97, 98. Well, yeah, because he was on there for 2 years, or a year and a half, or a year and a half, or year and 3/4 or so. You'll see his reports.
Oh my gosh.
And then whenever I was bored, I walked over and just opened up the book and read his reports, and they're just like, chef's kiss. Holy Christ!
Yeah.
So it's
I know,
a
so
public
funny.
record.
I can't even imagine if somebody if he wrote a book now, because now you have all these Asia stories. And I remember him telling me about traveling, because he had gone traveling before he moved to Taiwan. And even some of his stories from there, I was like, oh my God, dude, like, so funny. I don't even want to ruin it. In case you interview him, I won't give away his stories. But
I think I better grab a bit more credibility or something like that before I can have him on here, because that could get me banned at this sort of nascent stage of my podcasting career. I better hold off on that one.
Yeah.
But you know what? He's on my list. So I have a list.
Oh, I bet.
He's on the
I
list.
bet.
But he's a little bit further down. Not that I wouldn't enjoy it, but I need to work my way up to him. So.
Oh my God, fair. Totally fair.
All right, so that was interesting too. So, and I remember you segue to your leukemia that you had, because I think it happened on. I knew about it, so I think you told me like the very last, because you didn't tell me right away. I don't think. I think it was like the last dance of the year or something like that.
Oh,
is that
probably
true? And that was the night. That was, first of all, that was. What the hell was it? Edgefest, I think it was going on at that night, because I went to Edgefest, and then we had the dance at St. Thomas More College at the hall.
Yeah.
The band was playing, and the party was always good, and it was the last part of the year. And it was the same night that Princess Diana passed away. And he told, that might have been that night, or it was around that time, but I remember
it was around that time.
There was a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Coming on that one day. And I was like, I wasn't really prepared to deal with all that.
Yeah, you're right. It was the Princess Diana day, because I remember talking to there was one of the campus cops, Dennis.
Yeah.
Yes, and he was really like upset about her passing away. I remember him talking about that.
I might have been there when he was talking to you about it, maybe even, because I was talking to. I remember you told me to, or maybe you told everybody.
No, I don't think I told everybody at that time.
No, but Dennis told everybody about. I might have been there when he was telling, because he told me about Princess Di that night as well too.
Oh,
I might have been talking with him.
Okay, yeah, could have been. Yeah.
Piecing that night together. It was a crazy night, but I think that was a night that you told me. So that might have been the day it happened that you found it out as well.
Yeah, it could have been, because it was definitely during the day.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I had to just pretend everything was normal for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
Just grin and bear it.
I think you got pretty drunk that night.
Me?
Maybe I was really drunk. Well, it's not that there was booze at that party, but I remember it shocked the hell out of me, though. I was like, holy Christ.
Yeah, it was
for a few days.
The funny thing is, it's not funny, but it's funny now when I look back that at that age, like you don't really get you feel pretty invincible, you know? Like I remember at the time thinking, oh God, like this is going to suck. I'm going to lose my hair.
Yeah, I can feel terrible for a while.
But I just, like, it didn't even occur to me, like, oh, I could possibly die from this. Like that was not on my...
If left untreated.
Yeah,
exactly.
No, and even at the time, I kind of got lucky, because at the time they were in the middle of a clinical trial, and they were in the middle of changing over the medication protocol that they would normally use. And I didn't qualify for the trial because the way that my cancer presented was a bit strange. So my doctor at the time could actually choose what he thought was the best course of action. And so he chose this, I guess it was more of an experimental drug at the time. It was the one that they were testing. He used that one, which since has become the standard for that treatment, right?
Okay.
Right. And prior to that, though, like, of course, the worst part is you have all these friends who are in med school and dental school. And I remember Phil Chang. Phil Chang, Phil and I were on the phone, and he's like looking it up in his textbooks. And he was reading it. He's like, okay, here, let me just read it out to you. Because I was diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia. And so he's reading it, and all of a sudden I hear his voice trail off, and he goes, you know what? It's not really important what this textbook says. And I was like, no, dude, like, what's it say? Like, it's fine. You can tell me. And he's like, no. I mean, you know, these books, they write these. Like, they're like dated.
Good practice for him being a GP or something afterwards. He's like, yeah, I learned not to, maybe learn to stop before he starts presenting you with the news. God.
Yeah, so it's pretty funny.
That's funny. Yeah, so you got in right away, and you started treatments right away at the university.
Yeah.
Thank goodness you got to stay at the university hospital.
Yeah.
For the whole time.
So I'd have
there,
lots of visitors. People would come over. They'd bring,
Yeah.
hey man, I brought you this Slurpee. Total university things. People would come over. Oh yeah, I just had a break from classes, so I thought I'd come over.
Yeah, that's all right. If you're gonna do
no.
it, that's where you want to do it at. So
yeah,
it's your second home, I guess. And you're in there for a while though. Like you were in there for
a year.
It was a whole year. Hey,
it was a whole year, and it was pretty intense. So a lot of cancers, when people do chemo, you go in for a couple hours and then you go home. But in my case, the cancer was pretty aggressive, so the treatment's pretty aggressive.
Okay.
So I would go in and do seven days of 24-hour day chemotherapy. And then I'd go home for a couple days, usually right. They're like, oh yeah, you're going to go home and, see what happens. And usually within like 2 days, I'd be back because you're just too sick. Right.
Yeah. That's crazy.
And then you catch all these things while you're in there because you're so immunocompromised that you're, that's why you end up in there for so long after that. Right. Because your body it just doesn't. That's why you lose your hair and your digestive tract and all these things, right? So you're just there, number one, because that's pretty much the only way you can get fluids. And then you're also usually catching some, disease virus that's gone around the hospital, and then you're fighting that too. So they've got to monitor you. So it's pretty full on when I was doing it. But everybody was great, and it was quite funny. I'd run into like I said, residents and stuff that I knew.
Yeah, of course you would. Yeah.
Yeah, and like
pretty
sometimes
popular.
they'd come in like, hey man, can I hide in? We're supposed to be doing rounds. Can I hide in here for a while? Like maybe hiding in my room. And my mom would we always had like bags of candy and stuff, like my mom would have like a candy dish of chocolate and stuff. So hey, can I just come in here and grab some snacks? Like just be hiding in there.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, you look pretty punk rock without your hair, so that was kind of cool because you look good with no hair.
Yeah, you know what? I know it's funny. I remember my doctor.
Yeah,
I know. My doctor said that. He's like, I gotta tell you. He's like, you look really good bald, and I was like, oh, I bet you say that to all the girls. He's like, no. He's like, trust me, I see a lot of people without hair, and he's like, but your head is very well proportioned, and you don't have any weird scars or anything. Yeah. He was like, you got a really good looking head there.
I've always been scared about shaving my head or going bald because I'm like, there's a weird like birthmark I've never seen or something like that.
You don't know what's under there, right?
You never know. Totally. You never know. So I got a good full head of hair. So I have that going for me, but that not much else, but I have that. But you could pull it off. You pull it off really well. So well done you. Like you could have a couple extra piercings, maybe a little tat somewhere. Not much.
I was telling my daughter how one of the times, because your hair, what happens is your hair falls out, and then as your body starts to rebound from the chemo, everything starts to grow again, and so your hair will start to grow. And in between treatments, I got my hairdresser and lent us these stencils, and so we had shaved all these stencil marks in my head. I had a big martini glass in the back of my head. I had lightning bolts and stuff, and because the hair is going to fall out again right away anyway. What I didn't realize was that the second time this happened, for whatever reason, kind of like the stubble in the back had kind of stayed.
Yeah.
So I didn't know this, but I'd been walking around for months, and then of course it's your hair is all dead again, so then it's not growing. So I had this shadow of a martini glass stuck in my head for like months, and I had no idea. And I was like in the kitchen one day, and this guy's looking at me, and then he goes, I like the martini glass. And I was like, pardon me? And he's like, yeah, you got a martini glass stuck in the back of your head. I was like, oh my God, I had no idea I was walking around with this thing stuck to the back of my head for months.
Totally punk rock. That's totally punk rock.
I know. So my daughter thought that was the best story.
It is a good story.
I was like, yeah, you gotta watch out when you're gonna do all these weird hairstyles.
Yeah, you never know what's gonna come back to get you, though. Yeah. But you got through it, though. I remember you were. It was a hell of an experience. Do you have any moments? Well, I'm sure you did, but did you have any moments? Because you're such a cheerful. At least that's your persona that you put on there. But what about those? You had some pretty dark moments at all when you were really, really sick?
Yes, I did. I did, in fact.
Yeah.
I remember it was probably about halfway through the treatment. And at that point, it became kind of harder for people to come around. I remember some of my friends saying, like, yeah, man, it's not that I don't want to come, but I find it really hard to see you in these conditions, right?
Yeah.
So my visitors had kind of tapered off, and I remember, like, in the room, and I was thinking, really questioning, like, I'd grown up in a family where we went to church. I'm from a small town in Saskatchewan, like all of us were, and we went to an Anglican church, and I didn't really, unfortunately for my dad, I didn't confirm. I wouldn't get confirmed.
Oh, sacrilege. God.
I know, but I was like, I was like, well, I don't really know if I want to confirm to this at this point in my life, but we did go to church and was baptized and all this kind of stuff. And at the time I remember thinking, like, I was in the hospital, and I was thinking to myself, like, what is the point of this? Like, I was like, I feel like I'm a pretty good person. I try to do good things. I try to live a good life and respect other people and all this stuff. And I felt like, okay, like, if there's a God, like, haha, you got me. Like, I was like, that was funny. That was a funny joke. Like, and I was but I was like, okay, but can this be over now? Like, you made your point. You got your joke. Like, haha, you're, like, so powerful. And at the time I had a brother who had converted to Catholicism. So he's he's got a master's in divinity, I think, and his wife's got her PhD actually in theology now, and so they were quite religious, and so he'd come to
quite devout,
quite devout, and very philosophical. And so he was visiting, and I said, I just feel like if there was a God, like, why would he pick me for this? Like, this doesn't feel fair. And I was like, so, for that reason, I just have to think there's just not a God. And my brother at the time was like, okay, well, it's not like that. He was trying to explain stuff. And at the time I was on really heavy painkillers. So my memory of this particular conversation, in my memory, there was a flip chart board in my room, and he was drawing diagrams, like, on it. Of course, that was not the case. Like, we were just talking, but I was, like, imagining this flip chart and him drawing diagrams and trying to get all philosophical. And he was like, just, can you just promise me one thing? He said, can you just don't lose faith yet, and he's like, I'm going to think about this. Cause I was like, I get what you're saying. Like, I was like, I get what you're saying. I'm just having a hard time buying it. Like, it's just not,
okay.
All these things that you're talking about are just not sitting. Like, they're not, I hear you, but you're not convincing me. And he was like, okay, let me think about this for a while, and I'll come back. A couple days later, he came back and he said, do you remember The Princess Bride? And I was like, yeah. And he says, okay, I am going to do what The Princess Bride, what happened in that movie. I'm going to be the grandfather, and I'm going to come here and I'm going to read you this book. And he brought with him The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho.
Oh, yes.
And at the time, fantastic book, right? And at the time, he'd come in, he'd start reading, and I'd fall asleep. I was too stoned. I was still on too many painkillers that like I just couldn't stay awake, right? And he'd come again the next day.
Not a long book.
He'd try again, and it just didn't work. And he said, okay, this is not working. But he said, I'm going to leave this book here. When you're up for it, can you just promise me that you're going to read this book? And I was like, okay, sure. And at the time, I didn't realize why he had come back with this book, right?
Yeah.
And if it was the summer after I had finished my 3rd chemo treatment, and I'd finally had a stack of books. I started working my way through these books, and I remember at that time reading it, and I read it cover to cover in one sitting, and I put it down, and I was like, that guy, like, I was like, I know why he brought this book. And it was really to address that conversation that we'd had, you know, which was, I really felt abandoned in my faith. And he was trying to come up with a way to share that he thought that this was really just part of a journey. Right. And, yeah. And I have to say, I think when I look back on that whole time in my life and going through treatment and all the things that happened, there were so many ups and downs through it. It was true. I really feel like that book spoke to my experience in that, and like just people that I would meet throughout those times. And, you know, there'd be really ups and downs and days where I remember just sitting in the room and just looking at the clock. Because they had these clocks, like almost like the kind that are in your classrooms, and they tick, you know, the minute hand. And I would be staring at these clocks for hours at a time, and I would look up and not even realize, like, holy cow, like 4 hours has gone by, and I've just been staring at this clock. Because you're just sort of, you're just kind of there, right? And you're kind of I was kind of in a frozen state of shock almost, like you're processing what's going on. And when I look back now, I feel like that cancer journey was, it was just a step through my life journey, I guess, that kind of has impacted, I think, how I live day to day now, and even how I have my own daughter now and how I teach her to see the world and things like this. So there was dark days for sure, but those dark days I look back up with fondness of those days now. Like, I know that they were a tool that taught me how to live a different kind of life. So
yeah, gee whiz.
Yeah.
You know, like, you and I were pretty close. We're really good friends.
I remember you coming to visit me, actually.
Yeah, but you know what?
Skipping class. You were skipping class. It was a night class.
I skip a lot of classes. I skip a lot of classes. But no, but I never came over as much as I should have. And I feel really bad about it. I'm still sorry about it. And it bothers the hell out of me. And it's a lot of it, well, I was probably feeling a lot of what you were feeling. Because I was pretty angry. And I didn't think you deserved to be there. And I found it very difficult to think about you in there, and I had a hard time coming over there, and I really wanted to visit you, and I didn't do it enough. So finally went over there and visited you, but afterwards it was.
But you know what?
It hit me hard, man. It hit me hard after too.
I have to say though, what I appreciated was you came over and we just had an honest conversation about that. Like, I think you actually did say to me, I wish I could come. Yeah, I knew you were struggling with the conversation. And you're like, I'm having a hard time here.
Yeah. Okay.
And I remember you saying this to me too. You're like, you're tough. And it reminds me of my dad. My dad's conversations are like that. You got to toughen up. He's an old farmer, right?
Yeah. I know your dad. Yeah.
Yeah. And, but I remember that. And I actually just appreciated that conversation. I knew for people that it was hard to come and visit, like, you know, when they did, it really meant something. And it wasn't that you needed to come lots of times. It's just to know that you're being held in someone's thoughts is all you really need to hear, I think. Yeah.
Oh, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
So it taught me a lot too. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
See a munchkin running around there. So funny.
Yeah, I'm in her room. I come in her room because she's got a good setup for when I'm teaching online and things like this. She's got like the proper desk where you can set your computer up and stuff.
I have nothing. I have a painting. That's all I have. Like, I should go in that room. Decorate it like hers.
Her room is pretty cool because it's got like, you know, like science crystals and like things like this in the back. So it's actually, it works out well.
I got to get her to come over here. She can decorate my room. Maybe that's what she can do.
Her desk is full of, she's got things like this, like the fidget cube. So when I'm talking to my students online, I'm like playing with stuff and
I know I got to stay away from that kind of stuff. Well, thanks for sharing that, though. I think it was awesome that you shared that, because it is important to share that kind of stuff. And she's in the back. What a goof.
She's so funny.
So, anyways, but that is a great story, and I want to hear more about it. But you should do your own podcast at some point, or or we can do it again. I want to move on a little bit, because you've said some interesting stuff that happened in your life, though, too. Like, so you were doing English, I believe, in the university. I think that was right? You were an English major.
Yep.
Which is pretty cool. And you graduated in, let's say, 2000. 2000.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's not bad, actually, because I was in school about a year longer than you, and that's when I was done too. So, or maybe 2 years old. I don't even know how old you are. A little bit older than you, and that's when I was done school too. So, well done, you. Congratulations. That's awesome. So
oh my gosh. You know what's so funny is I came back, when I came back from treatment, I was like, I guess it's just a way of coping, right? Like so many of your things, like big things in your life are out of control. So then you try to control the things you can control. And so for me, I came back to school. And again, when I look back on it, my doctor must have just been shaking his head. Like, he must have been like, dude, what the hell are you doing going back to school right now? Like, in all likelihood, you're going to have to quit again and come back and do more treatment. And plus you, like, literally I'd finished treatment and was like, okay, I got to go back now. Like, this is my plan. This is what I'm doing. And went back, took like a full course load and I started school. I had no hair. I remember like people that I was just meeting in classes are like, oh, I love your hair. And I'm like, thanks.
I know. You look great.
Growing back. Like, people who didn't know me just thought I had this haircut for fashion reasons or whatever. And like
I said, you're tough, man. You're tough.
I got back into it. I was just so focused. I was like super nerd, where I was like, had to ace all my classes. And before that, I was never like that kind of a student.
Really?
I was like, hanging out in the hallway, having coffee and
hanging out in the tunnel.
In the back. Yeah, hanging out in the tunnel.
People watching.
Totally. So it kind of changed, like I said, right away. I guess it was just a coping mechanism when I look back on it now.
Yeah, maybe, for sure.
So
then you'd done school, but you went over to Taiwan then, I guess, to teach English. A lot of people do that from here.
Yep.
Right out of school, that's what you did? You applied for a job to teach right away, or that's one of the jobs you applied for and got it, or how'd you get that job?
No, I was actually supposed to go back to school. I was going to move to Nova Scotia and do a degree in public relations. I'd been accepted to school there, and had broken up with my boyfriend at the time, and I was trying to buy my plane ticket to go to Nova Scotia. And then at the same time, I'd run into Jeff Spears. Remember him? Spearsy.
I ran into him last summer.
Oh my God.
Where the hell was it? If Spears, you're watching it, when was the last time I ran into you? It was awesome seeing you, though, man. It was I think it was a year ago I saw him. It was awesome.
That's so funny. Yeah.
He hasn't changed at all either. He's great. He's a wonderful man. I love him.
Yeah. So I'd run into him at a bar or something that summer. And he's like, dude, why don't you take a year off and come? I'm in Taiwan right now. Why don't you come too? And,
okay. Right. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, really? And I was like, yeah, you know what? Maybe I should just do something like that for a year, like take some time away. And same time too, I really wanted to get away. Like I needed space from that whole experience to just kind of move on.
Yeah.
And I wanted to go where I knew Jeff, but it wasn't like I was going there with Jeff. It just happened to be that he was like, I know some people. He's a contact. Yeah. So, and I knew another guy, Dave Barker, was over there, and Dave was like, Dave was like, I can get you a job at my school. Why don't you come here? So in the end, I kind of looked at plane tickets. It was going to cost me less to go to Taiwan than it was going to cost me to fly to Nova Scotia at the time.
Wow.
And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go do this for a year.
It's a sign.
It was a sign. I was running on the treadmill when I made this decision. And I called my parents and I was like, you know what? I'm going to go to Taiwan. And my dad was like, good for you. Made a decision.
Good for you. Well done.
Yeah. And then when you're over there, you're always like, I'm only going to stay for a year. And then it's, I'm just going to stay for one more year. And then you just kind of end up staying longer than what you'd anticipated initially. So
when you're there, there's a good expat community of teachers, English language teachers. You got a good group there after a while. Hey, it's sort of like almost like a family type group that you have and support system that you have over there. Hey.
Yep, totally.
So guys like Troop showed up.
Yep.
Was it around the same time, or when did he show up?
No, he came. I was already there probably for 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, I think he was getting I think he was getting like a 12-year education degree or something like that.
Yeah, he was on the 12-year path. Yeah. And then he had gone to Europe for a year. So he'd been traveling.
Oh, yeah.
I think I got an email from him and he was like, hey, where are you? And I was like, oh, I live in Taiwan. I was like, you should come over here. And he was like, done. So I don't remember if I had to pick him up at the airport or if he just showed up on my door, but he crashed at my roommate and I had an empty room. He slept in our like spare room, which was kind of a closet.
Yeah. Like that's good.
3 or 4 months, I think.
Well, when I lived with him and Smitty, I was actually living in the closet as well too. They had sort of a boot room in the back, and that was actually my room. It wasn't even a bedroom, I don't think.
It was so funny.
So good. So good that he had to sleep in a closet. That's good enough for me. I appreciate that. Yeah. You enjoy your time over there? You must have if you stayed 6 years, I guess, hey?
Yeah, I loved it. I really did love it. Yeah. It got stale. The only thing why I left, I think I still would have maybe considered living there, but it was professionally, I wanted to do more. Mm-hmm. So, I actually, at that time, I'd found a job in publishing over there and then decided that this is kind of, I think, what I want to be in. And, I talked to a bunch of people over there. I used to go to conferences all the time for publishing, and they were like, if you really want to do this, you're better off going back to North America and getting in there first. So that's what I ended up doing. That's ultimately how I ended up back in Canada and found work in that industry and did that for a few years. And then of course the internet came along and wiped out that job too.
Yeah, it's totally changed everything at all. You came back to Vancouver. Is that where you moved to? We got your job and you moved right to Vancouver from there?
I actually
go back to Saskatchewan,
toured Canada I toured Canada for about 6 months trying to figure out where I was going to live. And I made the mistake of coming home in January. Never come home from a tropical. Yeah. From
That's
living
right.
in the tropics.
Yeah.
In January. And it was a cold, harsh January. I remember getting stuck on the farm during a blizzard. And like watching all these people who were stuck at a Costco in Saskatoon during that blizzard. And I was like, what are those people complaining about? They've obviously never been to our farm. Like I was like, I'd do anything to be in that Costco right now.
That would have been 2007 or 8, I guess.
Yeah. I think 2007.
Because I remember that blizzard because I do emergency response for my company. And we still talk about that event because a lot of people are stuck in their office building that blizzard. But I was in Calgary at that time, so I wasn't aware of it, but I'm still aware of it. So that's kind of how I know the date of that. So you were back at that time. Yeah, I'd never come back in January. Although if you want to get a litmus test, that you come back in January. That's if you like it, you're going to stay because it gets better than that. It doesn't get any worse than Saskatchewan in January.
Oh my gosh, it's so funny.
So you came back, you traveled around the country, did some touring.
Yeah, and it was cold everywhere. It was Toronto was like freezing cold. Montreal was freezing cold. And I remember actually being with you once in Calgary, and I felt like I was the Terminator. I felt like I was, do you remember that scene in the Terminator where he's stepping on the nitrogen and he's freezing as he's walking? I felt like that. And I was like, how do we live here? How is this a thing? And I was like, I can't handle this.
Calgary's not that bad, like compared to a lot of places in Canada.
I know, you're like, oh, it's fine. Let's just walk the 6 blocks. And I was like, no, we need to get in the taxi, Rob. Like, I'm literally dying right now.
Cool. Put a toque on. Oh, Jesus.
And I was dying. Yeah, so then I came back and I came to Vancouver visiting some friends here and it was like plus 17. And I was like, okay, well, I guess this is where I have to live. Yeah. Well, so I don't blame you. I got stuck out here just because of the weather.
Well, that's okay, though. It's a good place to live. It's nice. It never gets too cold. Gets a bit of rain, but for a little bit too much rain for a prairie girl, hey? But
it's a lot of rain.
Yeah. So I get a question for you. Maybe you want to tell people about too. Is really because you have a good story about your adoptive parents as well too, or sorry, your natural parents too, because you're adopted. I met your parents are wonderful people. Live out in small town Sask, in January.
In January, yeah.
But you had a really interesting story about meeting, was it your mom?
Both.
Mom and dad, yeah.
Mom and dad, yeah.
Yeah. I thought so.
So yeah,
tell me about that story.
So during chemotherapy, when I was going through that, I'm adopted. I've always known I was adopted, and my parents actually said to me at the time, like, "Hey, maybe we should look up your biological
Right.
health information. We should see if we can track this down." Because at the time, you don't really know how your chemo journey is going to go, your treatment journey is going to go.
Right.
So I think they were thinking, let's just make sure we have all of our cards lined up in case we need to do bone marrow or things like this. Who knows? Yeah. And so at the time, you could apply for non-identifying health information. And so what we did is we filled out these forms and sent them away. And what they do is the social services or whoever gets this contacts the person that gave you up and says, "Hey, that baby that you gave up like 20 years ago, she's going through cancer treatment right now. Can we have your health records?" So that sent her into a panic. Yeah, she's like, "Oh my God, like I'm being punished for my choices."
Yeah.
Like she was like, then so she was like, "Can you tell her that I want to meet her?" So I get this call from social services and they say, "Okay, well, we talked to her and she's willing to share her health information, but she'd kind of like to meet you." And I was like, you know what? This is not really a great time for me. And so I told my parents about this, and my dad said, they came back and they said, because I was like, "Yeah, no, I don't really want to do this right now. Like, it's not really the best time. I'm kind of dealing with some stuff." And my dad came. I remember my mom and dad came into the hospital, and my dad said, "I've been thinking about this." And he said, "Maybe it would be a really nice thing to go through while you're going through this other stuff." Like he said, there's no rush, but maybe just open the door to this. Maybe you guys can exchange some letters. I think at the time, when I look, just now knowing my parents in a different way too, I think they were really thinking, well, what if this goes bad? Yeah. And Meaghan doesn't make it through this treatment, then this lady will have never had an opportunity to meet her. Right. So I think they really pushed it. Like they were like, "Hey, maybe you could consider this." And they said, "We're always going to be your mom and dad. Like we're your mom and dad, but sure. Yeah. But this might be a nice thing to do." So I said, "Well, yeah, I guess I could do it." So we exchanged a few letters, and I remember, like, I was like, I remember trying to write this letter, and I was like, God, I don't know what to say to this person. Like, how do you even start a letter like this, right? And I started, you see these things on TV, and I was like, that doesn't really feel like me though, just didn't feel like, he made the right choices. And I was like, I don't know what the heck she went through. I don't know if I feel like that's how I want to start it off. So I finally, I worked on it, and I was like, I think I have the perfect opening line. So I started it off with, "Hi, long time no see." And she said, and I go, I guess it's been a while. I can started the letter off, and this is what I've been, this is what my life has been like, and I'm curious to hear from you or whatever. And that was kind of how I started. And she said to me when she opened that letter, I was so nervous. And then she's like, and then the opening line was, "Hey, long time no see." And she goes, "And I just thought, yep, that's my daughter." Yeah. So it was good for her too. So it was pretty interesting.
That's funny though, because you wonder what the heritability of things like sense of humor and that kind of stuff is. You know what I mean? Like, because obviously there's a connection there.
Oh my gosh. I have to tell you, actually, that was one of the most interesting parts, is that you always think, I always thought, you learn your personality from who you're.
And there is an aspect of that, like, right. But
for sure. Yeah. Who you're raised with and stuff. But I came to realize, like, absolutely some of your personality has got to be genetic. Like, I was like, there was too many similarities in, how, like, I remember going to a restaurant with her and her husband, and how she was talking to the servers and stuff and joking around, and I was like, wow, like that's very similar. Sounds
familiar. Yeah.
Looks very familiar, and so and even like when we first met each other, like we're both you're kind of studying each other's face, right? And I was like, like it's so weird, like do we look the same or not? Like, it was like,
Yeah.
really, you know, and she's like, yeah, I know. Like, she's like, I felt the same way. Like, I was really digging, like trying to like, what looks the same? Like, what
does she look like you?
Yeah, in some ways we do look very similar, but I also look a lot like my birth father.
Your biological father. Because you like your daughter looks exactly like you, which blows my mind. It's hilarious. Like you see the pictures.
The funny thing is too, people that know her dad don't even see me and her at all. They're like, "Oh my God, she's a spitting image of your father." Yeah.
I don't know about that. Like, I don't know, because I see a lot of pictures of my friends' kids, and it's kind of weird because it's always like an amalgam, right? It's like those weird computer like mergings of them. It's like you see their eyes, and I love looking at my friends' kids because of that, because it makes it hilarious. But your kid, I don't know what her dad looks like, but she looks a lot like you when I see pictures.
Yeah, the funny thing is now, one day she was at my friend Jason's house, and he was watching her. I had to work one night, so she was over there. I wouldn't say watching, it was more like, here, you can watch my YouTube while I do my own thing over here.
That's what kids do.
And they came downstairs, and she had her hair down, and she was walking and laughing. She was wearing a hoodie. And for a second, I wasn't really paying attention. I was in my car, and I could see her through the lobby coming over. And I was thinking, oh, that girl looks kind of like I did when I was like a young girl. And then I was like, oh my God, that's my daughter.
Yeah. So
I was like, yeah, I guess that would look kind of like me then.
So do you keep in touch with your mom then, or do you stay in contact with her? Are you guys friends, or just sort of stay in touch, or how does that work?
No, she's actually passed away now.
Holy shit! I'm sorry to hear that. Holy cow!
Yeah,
How long ago did that happen?
Probably maybe 7 years ago or so.
Okay, sorry, interrupted you though, but did you guys stay in touch, or?
No, we didn't stay in touch. It was interesting. It was, I have to say, it was an interesting journey, knowing her, and I think a lot of where things fell apart for our relationship was she had a prescription drug addiction.
Okay.
So she was dealing with a lot of addiction issues. And so I think as a result, I don't think that she was in a place where she could emotionally deal with having me back in her life.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I think she tried for a long time, and then I think her addiction also prevented her from ever really dealing with some of her issues around maybe the decisions she'd made and things like this. I'm glad I met her. I'm glad I got to know her.
That is a blessing.
And I was also very respectful of her boundaries. So I guess the nice thing is I come from such a strong family that I didn't feel like, it was all cake to me.
She owed you anything, or
she didn't owe me anything. Yeah. And I was like, and I was happy I actually got to meet her parents. Her dad was an ambassador for Canada. He sat in the Divine government for several years, and they moved him to England. And great guy. And I remember talking to him just before he passed away, and I'm so glad that I had the opportunity to meet with him and his wife. And then when I moved back from Taiwan, actually, I had gone to Mexico with my birth mom and her husband for a vacation. And I mean, at the time she was, of course she was traveling. So she didn't have any medications with her, and she was in the middle of drying out, I guess. And it was very hard to be around. And at the time I was like, I think I'm just going to do my own thing. And then from there, she said she didn't want to have a relationship going forward. And I was like, hey man, like, you're obviously going through a lot of stuff, and I'm over here if you ever want to pick this up again. And if not, that's okay too. And then, but the interesting thing is I have quite a good relationship with my birth father.
Yeah, obviously. Because I remember you telling me about him.
Yeah. So at the time, so she had to track him down. So he's actually an American.
Okay.
And he's in a band. He's a musician.
Yeah.
So he played in a band with Carlos Santana's brother. So he grew up with those guys, with
Really, eh?
Santanas. Yes.
Is he a drummer?
And
Is he a drummer? No,
he's a guitar player.
Guitar player? Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And so he's been a professional musician and led this, colorful life, and just a really nice guy. I know his kids, and his daughter came up to visit here one time, and yeah, and my daughter loves him. Like, he FaceTimes her quite frequently, and he's trying to get her on the guitar with him, and she plays her viola, and yeah, like it's pretty fun actually. And he's he's got a lot of kind of neat energy. Like, he's like, I'd taken her to Paul McCartney. It was her first concert, so we were talking to him after. Yeah, not bad. Yeah, we were talking to him about that, and so she was so excited to be talking about all this music with him, and so it was pretty neat. Yeah. So the interesting thing is, I started off knowing my birth mom first, but continued to have a relationship with my birth father, and and
that's great.
It's been good. Yeah, it's been good. Really interesting, and he's a fun guy.
Where does he live now?
He's down by San Francisco.
When he lives somewhere, I guess, if because he's probably still, well, maybe not with COVID, but he's still in the band and still playing music. So
yeah, and actually he because he's part of sort of Latin rock music scene from San Francisco, there's actually a house with he's painted on the side of a house with his band, this like a mural. Like, it just went up like a couple years ago. I just saw it like, as a thing to see when you're in San Francisco. So that was pretty cool.
That is really, really, really cool. Yeah, and I'm so glad you were able to find a relationship there that and then your daughter gets to participate in that too.
Well, the funny thing for her is, like, cool. she's just grown up knowing him. Like, she's got grandma and grandpa, and then she calls him Papa. And
fair enough.
So for her, it's just it's just like another family member. She doesn't really even see the differences. Like, she just has people in her life that she's known and considers family. So it's pretty interesting, actually.
Holy Christ, Meaghan. It's like our conversations of old, man. Like, just go on and on and on.
I
love it.
I know. I'm so sorry. I was talking to one of my customers today, and he was he was telling me, he's like, "You're just so easy to talk to, Meaghan." And I was like, is it because I'm a good listener, or am I doing too much talking?
A little bit of A, a little bit of B, whatever. But no, I'm loving it. So now you're teaching at BCIT, you said, and you're still working in publishing, or no? What are you? What are you doing now?
I'm a regional territory manager for an educational travel company. So
right. Okay.
So what I do is I work with high school groups, and the funny thing is, it comes full circle, right? I know for me, moving away, living abroad was like game changing in my life. And traveling and seeing like all these different places and experiences, and now I provide that to students, and it's pretty cool to be a part of. It's pretty amazing. Some of these kids that I sell trips to that go on these trips have never even gone on an airplane before. So that they're coming back as different people. Like, it's pretty, and they're away from their parents for the first time, and so it's generally it's pretty rewarding, but it's been pretty stressful right now.
I never traveled anywhere in high school or anything either. Like, my first plane ride was 1999. And, so I definitely understand that kind of enthusiasm for the job, and getting these kids to see different places too. And again, this kind of sucks this year with the COVID and stuff. Kind of breaks it out this year. But it's going to get back. It has to get back at some point, to some degree, and maybe there's more controls in place or something like that. But it's not.
What's so interesting though? Like, I was actually living in Taiwan during SARS.
Right, 2002.
And Taiwan got hit super hard with SARS.
Totally, and that's why they're doing so well now, right? Because they learned
from that. Yeah, totally. They learned from that, and they implemented the playbook. Yeah, totally.
Exactly what they were doing there, and they're still doing it. Like, it was like a minor blip.
Yeah.
And it's barely.
Yeah, I've actually got a ton of friends that are still over there, and I talk to them fairly frequently. And they were like, "Yeah, no, we're business as usual." I was like, oh, our kids are not even going to school anymore. And they're like, oh yeah, we didn't miss a day.
Yeah. So, well, that's pretty cool. And
Yeah.
now you're also talking about podcasts and teaching this kind of stuff too in school. Is that as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
So actually,
I want to talk to you about this too.
Yes. So one of the classes I teach an introduction to marketing class. That's one of my classes. And then I also teach a public speaking class.
Okay.
And so if you can imagine, I'm teaching a public speaking class online right now.
Yeah.
So that's pretty
Hi,
weird.
everyone. How you doing?
Yeah, that's
probably Professor Rob.
Professor Rob, get in here. I
Professor
actually
Huck.
should bring you in as a guest speaker, and you can talk about your own podcasting, and they would love that. So what I'm thinking, because of course I'm like changing things around and trying to make it, I always want my classes to be relevant to what's going on right now, especially because I'm at BCIT. It's a technical school, so we don't get stuck talking about theory a lot of times. It's really about applied learning.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I was like, you know what, I think I'm going to change my class around and have them, I make them do a YouTube video. That's one of their assignments.
Good. Yeah.
And then they have a couple like just traditional where they got to get up and speak. It's online right now, but they're doing that. And then I said, you know what, I think I'm going to get them to do a podcast.
Yeah.
Because again, whether they ever do it again, it's fine, but it'd be a nice kind of experience to have for class and for them to be able to say, hey, I actually tried that once, you know?
Yeah. And really podcast is very, very open-ended too. So you can have a podcast about anything. There's a lot of great scripted podcasts. There's one that people just going on diatribes or people complaining about stuff, or people, you know, this is what I learned about things, and talking to a camera and talking to people about what they learned. Yeah. And people that write just fiction stories, and they can actually read those things out. For me, like, it was always about, because I really enjoy talking to people. You know that. I really enjoy talking to people. And with the COVID shutdown, I felt that I was very suppressed, and it gave me a lot of anxiety that I wasn't able to go see people anymore in person. And that's why I was doing those Facebook Live things. That's the reason why I was doing it, because I was feeling just like, I got to get out of this bubble. So that gave me a way to connect with people.
I got to say, I loved it. I have my Facebook notifications turned off. So it was always kind of random whether I caught you or not. I was trying to figure out the pattern of when you were on. But if I ever saw that you were on, I always would click on it. And I actually thought it was such a nice thing that you did I really thought it was a great thing to do, especially during the height of the lockdown, because it was hard. Like, there was hard days for people, you know, like it was long, and, you know, you're really limited in who you're seeing and interacting with. So for me, I really thought it was a nice thing that you did there. So thank you for doing that. Also, I was like, hey, what beer are you drinking tonight, Robbie?
Always had a drink.
That was one of my favorite parts. Drinking. What craft beer are you drinking tonight?
I know, it was a great way for me to go, you know, to help out some of our local craft brews, and give them a little shout out. Why not do that? I don't know, because normally I'd be in the bar having a pint somewhere, but now I have to bring the pint to me. And so it was kind of cool. The craft brewers actually did pretty well during the initial COVID lockdown, because people wanted the nice beers and they couldn't have them. So they were actually, my buddy at 9 Mile, he said they couldn't keep up with the demand. It was crazy how much booze was going out with them. So that was kind of cool. The
funny thing, even out here, they said like alcohol sales were like through the roof. And the guy, I remember this, it was a news story, and the guy says, it was the liquor store here. He goes, yeah, the weird thing is, he's like, it's not like we're selling like the big bottles.
Yeah.
He's like, we're going through those Texas Mickeys. He's like, we are going through those things like crazy right now.
Yeah. Got it. Yeah. Those buy it by the bulk, man. I try to give back my bottles and stuff at Barcan. It took forever, man. It was like, people are like huge bags, and they had limits about how many bags you could bring in. I was like, Jesus.
My mom and dad.
I could never find a time to go there because there's just too many people. I don't want to wait long.
I know. My mom and dad said the same thing. They're like, oh my gosh, like they go, we got denied. They went to Davidson one day to take their bottles back, and they go, we can't accept any more today. We're too full.
Yeah. Davidson of all places. Like, Jesus.
I know. I thought that was so funny.
Oh, Christ. But anyways, yeah, no, it was a good time though to connect with people, and I find podcasting such a cool thing. I used to blog right back in the 2000s
I
or whatever. So,
remember.
and
I
again, that was a
remember.
nice way to connect with people. But I always found it was too one way, and there was not a lot of give and take. And then I got into Twitter for a while, well, for a long while, and I find Twitter. I finally weaned myself off at cold turkey actually, and because it's you know me, I like to argue and stuff, but a lot of the argument is just the fact that I want to connect with people and
Yeah.
interact with people. But it's gotten really bad with politics nowadays, and everyone's got to have an opinion about something. And
I wanted to ask you about that. Am I allowed to ask you stuff on here?
yeah, go ahead.
I wanted to ask you about that because I know that you get kind of political. So, but my point was, what I'd been pondering is I was like, I've always loved you. I've been a Rob Huck fan. I was like, oh, he's got such a good heart. He's a great guy. And so what I'm always curious about is with all this stuff going on with Donald Trump and stuff, like sometimes I'm like, why would Rob say this? Like, I don't think he actually believes these things.
Oh, I believe everything I say.
Some of the things that you were arguing with someone, like I'd see you talking to someone, I'm like, I don't think that's true though.
Maybe. I don't know. There's viewpoints.
So would you say that you're sometimes arguing just for the sake of arguing for fun?
Sometimes, but not all the times. And I find we get into our bubbles. That's what it is. And I think,
and you know what, a friend
we're
of mine,
not all getting the same
chambers.
information. What's that? We are echo chambers.
Yeah.
So if you see me arguing in some way, it's often because I do have a point. Maybe it's a stupid point, but I do believe it is, and to me, it comes from a good place. But I also argue with people just to be right sometimes as well too. But honestly, that's wrong though. Like, and it's gone too bad. It's gone too much because if we're not listening to each other,
yes,
then we're not. People want to lose friendships over this kind of stuff. Then maybe we're going too far, and so I've curbed it back quite a bit, and then I started doing it actually more January. You might have noticed, like I don't really post a lot of political stuff anymore, or if I do, it's a joke or might be one-off things. But I try to do it from sort of a positive point of view or whatever. Like you don't see me talking about Justin Trudeau anymore, and I have opinions about him, but I'm not posting it anymore because what's the point? That's not changing anybody's mind.
Yeah.
You know that, and then my brother passed away. Hey, my older brother.
Yep.
Mark in February, and that hit hard. And I realized, man, I gotta change everything. And for him, he was always angry and down, and it was very hard to talk to him sometimes. Well, no, lots of times it's very difficult to talk to him. But he was very depressed, and he had a lot of emotional issues too. And he was a good man. Like he was very helpful, and he was a good person. But he had a lot of struggles in his life. And then I saw a lot of that in me. I was like, what am I doing? Yep. And that kind of took him way down to a place I don't want to be at. Yeah. And so then after that happened, I really, really started laying off arguing with people, although I catch myself every once in a while. It pisses me off. But that's why I always say, you have to approach things with love and compassion, right? If you're not doing something out of love and compassion, then you're doing it for the wrong reasons. So if you're doing it because you're right, that's not love and compassion. It's not it. If you're trying to show somebody that they're wrong, that's not love and compassion. Yeah. You know what I mean? You can. Yeah. You're allowed to step back. You're allowed not to comment on things. Yeah. So I still kind of get in there once in a while, put my little digs there, but I'm winning off it. I'm doing better, and that's the only way to get out of this funk. If we're going to kill each other if we. Yeah.
I would agree with that.
So that's kind of where I'm kind of going right now.
Yeah.
That's why I'm doing this. Yeah. Talking to people.
Yeah. Connecting and I think also something else which you touched on was hearing people, listening to people as well. Yeah. Right. Like where you're and connection. I was actually just reading I really am into Malcolm Gladwell right now.
Fair. Yeah.
And
we all have our Malcolm Gladwell face. Yeah.
Well, what I really like is I find his writing style so entertaining.
He's a good writer.
Yeah, he's a great writer, and I listen to his podcast, and even when I listen to his podcast, like what I like is when he's doing his interviews and stuff, he's just so he's just curious.
He is. Yeah, that's his appeal.
Yeah, and he asks lots of questions. And I think for me, I'm like, it was funny that this customer said this to me today, and I was like thinking, yeah, but you're such a cool guy. Like, why wouldn't I ask you all these questions, right? And I think what you just said is true. Like we have a hard time. We get stuck in our echo chambers or whatever you want to call it, and we can't get outside of that. And the thing is too, I'm like, a lot of people that I see posting stuff, I'm like, but you're like a great person. Why would they be this negative, or why would they post this kind of a comment right now or whatever? Because that's not really who I think they are.
Well, people have different value systems though. And it doesn't mean they're wrong. It just means I value some things differently than maybe you might at some point. You know what I mean? Or my perspective's different. Maybe I value these things a little bit more than these things.
Yeah, that's true. But I also think,
and then you kind of do this kind of stuff. So
yeah, but I think that that's good, and that's what makes us interesting, is that we do have different opinions. But I think it becomes a problem when you can't, like what you say, when you're willing to lose friendships because of things like that. That's not good. Yeah, it's too much.
It's too much. So it's my rule in my podcast. You can ask me about it, but like, my job here isn't to promote an ideology or a political point of view. I don't mind talking it, but I'm really about our society's going wrong, and that's the other part of it too. After with my brother and everything else, and the things I've been working on myself, it's like you can't change the world. You can't. You can change yourself though, and by changing yourself, then maybe you can change the world. Those are two different things. You can't change the world. You can change yourself, and if you change yourself, that can change the world.
Oh my God, we're back to Lloyd Dobler. It
starts right there, man. It's all right there too. And if you want to go back to like, your Christian beliefs or whatever else, that's what they're teaching you there too. Because we're reading a lot about like that kind of stuff too. And I follow this guy, what is his name? He was talking about this too. It's like Jesus Christ is like, because a lot of people say Jesus would have said this, Jesus would have said this, this day and age. It's like, well, first of all, you don't know that. And secondly, Jesus he wasn't political. He was his thing was, I got to suffer. And I got to get through this. And by doing that, I can change the world. But he didn't he never talked about, he said render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's. He's like, that's not my problem. My problem is myself. You got to save yourself. And by that, the world will be saved. And if we all kind of take that approach, so maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm fucking up. Maybe I'm suffering. Maybe I got to suffer and get through the suffering. Because as when you had cancer, suffering is a big fucking deal, and you have to deal with that. And in the grand scheme of things, you weren't thinking about politics. You were thinking about, why is this happening to me? And that's a question we have to answer to ourselves all the time. And that's big enough in my mind.
It's interesting that you say that. Even I remember was another point in time, this doctor, his name kept coming up. People kept trying to tell me, oh, you should go talk to this guy. And I was like, well, you can't really just change your specialist. That's not how it works here. and I was like, besides, my doctor's pretty good. Like, I don't think he's trying to do anything weird. And this Dr. Ali, his name was, he kept getting suggested to me. And then I was at the university. My boyfriend at the time was pushing these vitamins on me. And I was like, yeah, I don't really think we should spend all this money. I'm not making money right now. Like, why am I spending all this money on vitamins? Like, and I was like, I don't really like the marketing behind it, because it was like all this verbiage that I didn't understand. I'm like, is this even true? Like what they're saying? So I was like, let's make an appointment with one of the biochemists at the university. We're sitting right here anyway. Yeah. So I reach out to one of these guys and I show him the marketing propaganda that this vitamin company had put out. And he's like, yeah, I don't know what this says. He's like, not sure what they're talking about. He's like, I mean, I could do a chemical breakdown of what's in these things, but he said, but it sounds like to me, what you're really looking for is just some alternative medicine practices. And he said, I know this doctor, he does acupuncture out of the Buddhist temple. He's like, here's his name. Why don't you give him a call? So, okay, sure. Why not? And he said, yeah, he's a pediatric oncologist. So he's got a pretty good perspective. Like he's a scientist by nature, but he does alternative treatment on the sides if you're interested. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to give this guy a ring. And his name had come up like 3 or 4 times prior to that. And I was like, yeah, you know what? Maybe I'm supposed to connect with this guy. So I go and talk to him. And it was super weird. First time I go see him, it was super weird. Because he's like, okay, come in. And it was Easter Sunday. And the Buddhists were like also celebrating something. So there's all this chiming and gongs going off and incense. And I'm downstairs in the basement of the Buddhist temple. And he says, okay, let me look at your eyes. And he like looks at my eyes. He's like, well, stick out your tongue. Like, let me look at your ears. And then he just sits there and he looks at me like this in silence for about, I don't know, it felt like 10 minutes. I'm sure it was more like 2. And then he takes his glasses off and he goes, let's get one thing straight. You're not here for alternative treatment. You're here because you're worried that this is your time. And this is not your time. He's like, you have a lot of life left to live.
Right.
He's like, cancer for you is going to be a tool, which is going to teach you, but you'll get through this. And he's like, if you want, I'm happy to do acupuncture on you. But he's like, I think what you need is to just talk. And so I would go back on Sundays and we would talk. And I had a really hard time opening up. I wasn't very good at, like, he'd be asking me these questions and in my head I'd have these answers, but I couldn't verbalize it. And I guess I was just, again, it's just how I was dealing with processing everything that was happening in my life. Yeah. And then one day I was journaling about this and I realized that, you know, he wasn't this wise person, like, you know, but what he did do was he asked the questions that I was having a hard time asking myself. And so I came back to him and I said, you know, I know that sometimes you've asked me these questions and they seem so easy and I haven't been able to get the words out. And I said, but I want you to know that every time you did, I always had those answers inside. And,
right.
And I said, and the thing is, I said, I've come to realize, like, all of us have the answers inside. We just sometimes don't know what questions to ask. And he was like, I think that you don't need to come anymore. You know, like he was like, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. That's great.
And I've always had that, like, you know, like when you just sit for a while there, sometimes you do, you know, you do need to figure it out yourself, but we do have those answers in us.
You know, people like mock, again, and going back to our Christian beliefs, because that's kind of my background, but people mock prayer. I'm like, what do you think prayer is? That's all prayer is. And prayer isn't like, man, I wish I could get $1 million. That's wishing. No, prayer is like, give me the strength and wisdom to understand what's going wrong. I'm sorry. And you acknowledge that I screwed up. I'm failing. I need to change. What do I need to change? And you're asking yourself this. And you can say it's God telling you or speaking to you, but it's coming from there. That's where it's coming from. That's all it is.
Yes.
That's not complicated. Totally. But it takes courage to do that and humility. Yeah. To look down and ask yourself these tough questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know you're exactly it. That's exactly what I think he's pretty wise. He's pretty wise.
He was amazing. Actually, one day I was like, I would like to write a book about that journey because, and I kept those journals. I have those journals of those conversations. Yeah, it would almost be like my Tuesdays with Maury, except it would be visits with Dr. Ali. I remember actually, you know, like he just had, he was an interesting guy because he was actually, I think he grew up going in the Hindu faith. And I said, well, are you religious? And he said, no, I'm not. I'm an observer. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, I feel comfortable in a church, a Catholic church, an Anglican church, a Buddhist temple.
Yeah.
I feel comfortable in all of those places. And actually, interestingly enough, because I said back at university, of course, we had friends all going to med school and stuff. And I was talking to one of the guys there and he said, yeah, he teaches one of our classes. And he said, a lot of people think he's kind of weird. And he said, but he starts his classes. He said, every class he starts off, he says, let's hold a prayer. I'm going to have a prayer.
Oh, wow.
For my
cool.
patients, for my patients.
Oh,
and he was like,
yeah,
because he's teaching at the med school. Right. And he said, you know, he just holds like a minute of silence. And he said, but the thing about it, he said, a lot of people laugh about it. He said, but what he really wants you to think about is every patient you're treating is somebody's mother, somebody's child, somebody's brother, someone's sister. Yeah. And he's like, and so when you go back to those basic things, like it teaches you compassion for those people. And he said, as a doctor, you know, it's easy for us to get caught up in the science and this person, you kind of remove yourself. But he said, but you know, it's a really good thing to always keep in mind when you're treating patients this way, right? So he was a very wise man, and I don't know if he's still practicing in Saskatoon. I haven't been in touch with him for a long time, but
Yeah, no, that's the right attitude. That's the right approach, in my opinion, anyways. And well, it shouldn't just be fucking doctors. Like, I don't know why they don't do that in my engineering class. They teach us an ethics class, And the point about ethics is like, you know, like, why do you do? We give a dilemma. Why would you displace this Amazonian indigenous tribe to build a road?
Yeah.
Of course, I'd actually make the argument why you want to build that road, and everybody else, oh, we can't move this tribe. But the point was to make the argument and do that kind of thing. But I like the idea, though, as well, is what's the right thing to do? Like, that's where the wisdom comes from. And you don't have to be intelligent to be wise.
Yeah.
You're knowledgeable, right? The wisdom comes from knowing the right thing, the proper path to do. And again, it takes humility, courage, hope, a little bit of grace, all that stuff to kind of find that path. So yeah, that's interesting. Fuck, geez, I didn't know that. That's a cool story. Or maybe did I forget it?
Like I said,
keeping this shit from me, Meaghan. You've been telling me this stuff a long time ago.
No, like I said though, for me, like, there was dark days, really dark days during that time, but there was gifts in those dark days too, right? So I think, and my brother, I pointed this out to him once I was in Taiwan, and I was like, dude, I lost God again. Like, I don't actually belong to a church or anything, but I grew up going to one, and so I have some, you know, I feel spiritual in my heart, and I think just as people, you know, it's a common thing for all of us. And I was shampooing my hair, and all of a sudden I was like, you know what, I don't think there's any God. I think there's nothing. and I called my brother and I told him about this again. I was like, just so you know, I lost God again. in the middle of a shampoo, I lost God. And he was like, you know what? So we had this big chat, and he said, you know, whenever you lose God though, it's a moment to take time to reflect on everything again. And he said, usually in those reflections, you come out, not necessarily more spiritual, but more aware, right? Like you've taken some time to question something, and you know, sat with it for a while, and then you come out. So I think kind of a learning and growing experience. You always grow from these things, right? So I kind of always thought that was an interesting one too. Yeah,
no, I can go on and on and on about this. We always had good conversations. This is awesome, Meegs.
I know, and it's been way too long. Way too long.
I know, that's why we're doing this sort of thing. This is my little experiment. And you know, you mentioned, you have all these little journals that you are keeping your notes, and you're always a writer. What I'm doing here as well, like, it came to me a few of my conversations into this is like, man, I know what I'm doing right now. I'm researching my book is what I'm doing. So I'm talking to you guys, but it's like, what, and I don't know, it's basically tell that, hey class, this is one of the things I'm doing here. I'm using this as research material about my time during COVID and what I learned from my friends during COVID. Because I have all these conversations, they're all recorded.
Yeah.
And all I have to do is transcribe them, find the themes. It's probably like 5 or 6 themes we can hit up. Meaghan said this, you know, Tom said that. And I can, and just see like these little moments. And it's interesting just having these good conversations that, and again, I wish you and I would have these conversations taped back when we had, because I know we used to have these really good, deep, meaningful conversations back then. It'd be nice to have those taped. But now we have the technology to do that. And I can actually take that, transcribe it, and
Tom is actually, the funny thing is, I actually interviewed Tom with a friend of mine back when we had this big camcorder.
Oh, yeah.
And
kids, we had camcorders. These things weighed like 500 pounds. Cost $6,000.
I know. I know, you're really something if you had a camcorder. And I interviewed Tom, me and a friend, and we were going to do, because she used to work for like a cable TV station or something. So she brought her camcorder and we interviewed him. And Tom actually, even back then, Tom had some really fascinating stories about, you know, I remember him playing the piano for Billy Graham, a Billy Graham special.
Really?
Yes.
That is huge. He's done a lot of cool things. That's pretty cool though.
but he got called like last minute. They're like, hey, the guy that was supposed to do this can't come. Can you do this? So he was like, okay. So he's like, I'm going to be on this, stage with all these people and I got to play this piano. And he was like, okay, where's my practice piano? And they're like, oh, we don't have one. It's full. There's a wedding going on in that room. You can't use it. So Tom had to sit on his bed and sit on the floor and use the bed as a piano and see the notes in his head and practice that way. And I remember him talking about, the spiritual side of that experience. And it was just so fascinating to me, that he had that he was reflecting on this moment in what and his experience. It was pretty neat. So I think you'll find through your recordings that you'll definitely have some interesting themes and.
Well, I kind of want to interview Tom again. That's what I want to do.
Yeah, you're like, I got to go back to Tom and hear that story about Billy Graham. Funny thing is, I'm like, oh man, I got to find that girl and dig out that tape. Oh, because that would be pretty interesting.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, and great. It's nice to have these kind of things. No, I'm just putting on my little hard drives like this big. Cost me $70, and I have everything on there. It's on my computer too, and I post it up there. I'm also starting to put these things up on YouTube. I just started doing YouTube. I wanted to work my way up through my podcast because you can edit. It's easier to edit audio than it is video, I find. And so and with Zoom, the way I'm doing it, you get 2 tracks that are recorded and then also a master track. So you can, if you have any issues, like my first few podcasts, like every time I because I always get my throat gets cough, feels like I have COVID sometimes. So I would cut that out. You can't really do that with YouTube, but I did my last one with my buddy Kevin Tucker from Notre Dame, and he's actually starting this as well too, and he posted some video on YouTube. So it was like, can I have the video? So I gave him the video. So he posted on his YouTube channel. So I was like, oh, screw it. I'm going to do my YouTube channel too. So I just posted on my YouTube channel, which has 0 views today. That's okay. But I really enjoy doing this. I love it. I'm having a blast. And it's been so like this. It's like those Facebook Live concerts, but even better.
Yeah. Because
I can take my time at it. I don't have to stress about learning 10 songs. And
yeah, I actually saw that video where you guys were talking about that, and you're like, yeah, it was pretty hard because I had to learn 10 songs.
Then I was setting it up, and I was doing sound checks and had it in my living room or wherever I had it, and that's stressful. And I always had it timed. Especially the last 7 or 8 of them, they're always at the same time, Saturday nights at 8 o'clock or 8:30. I was like, I want to be very consistent because people want to watch me.
Yeah, I know. See, I think that's where I figured it out. I was like, oh, I think Rob's on now.
I was doing Friday nights, but then I was working Fridays. I was like, fuck, this is way too much. So Saturdays I can kind of practice, then set it up, and it was a lot easier to do that. But I enjoy this. It's been so rewarding doing this, and I don't know where it's going to take me, but I know it's the right path because I was kind of stuck in this place where I'm at, and I'm finally moving in that right direction again. And I don't know where it's going to take me, but
I actually want to do a podcast too. I bought a microphone. My daughter doesn't know this. I gave it to her for Christmas one year, but I was like, secretly, it's going to be for me.
Yeah. Well,
but I wouldn't mind doing one with her.
I've thought about doing some with my kids. Maybe I don't even have to put it online, but
yeah,
I think it's a great idea.
I love, because she's just so interesting.
You do once a year or something.
I can't wait for the day that you get to meet her. Actually, she's a great person.
No, I gotta get to Vancouver.
Soul. She's an
Are
old
you
soul.
Vancouver or what?
Yeah, right downtown.
Okay, I was supposed to go there this summer, but COVID.
I started. So during COVID,
I'd love to see you again, though.
I started doing these walks on the seawall. It's almost my way of meditating.
Oh, so nice.
I go for these walks, and so I was like, oh, I'm going to sneak in a walk before I talk to Rob. And
thanks.
Yeah, and they've been really, really good, actually. Just to, again, I think it's just, you get out. I know we're still in the city, but like I'm right on the water, so I quite often see seals and stuff. But what I'm so amazed about all the time is like a lot of times I see stuff that everyone else doesn't see, right? Mm-hmm. And I was telling my daughter about this because I make her come with me sometimes, which is the best time because you have the best conversations with your kids when they have no distractions. And I was telling her, I said, if you keep your eyes open, I said, I'll show you, there's a secret here. and only you and I are going to know about it. She's like, okay, what do you mean? I said, somewhere on this section, somebody had made a twist tie stick man.
Yeah.
And a little twist tie stick man, and he's holding a balloon. And some kid must have had it and dropped it. And so the stick man is stuck on the sidewalk, and everybody steps over him. Nobody sees him, but I see him. I found him one day, and then I was like, oh, there's my friend, the little stick guy. And so I showed her. And so when we come up to this section, we kind of watch to see, like, oh, is anybody else going to see this stick man? And everyone's too busy, right? They're too busy in their lives and on their phones or whatever else. And so the lesson for her there was, you know, always take time to just be in those moments, be in the moments, and you'll be surprised at what little gifts you get, right? And so the running joke, of course, now we got this little stick man that only we know. I'm like, oh, there's our friend.
Poor stick man, you know. Well, I'm so glad that you guys are his friend. You know, he's probably been there for a while, and it's like, finally,
someone noticed me. Yeah, I know. He's like I've got a balloon.
The balloon's right here. There it is. Like,
I know.
That's why I have the balloon, so you notice it.
So I'm happy little stick man with the balloon. Yeah, totally. So it's the best.
Should walk by with the balloon someday. Just say, hey, I got a balloon too. See.
Stick man.
You know, touch your nose.
Sticky. Yeah. We thought he got picked up the other day because we're like, where's the stick man? We couldn't find it. And then we went for a few more walks, and then we found him. So he's kind of, every once in a while he gets shoved along a little bit.
Maybe he's got a girlfriend.
Maybe.
Stick woman.
Part of me was like, oh, maybe some little kid found him and took him home. You know, they were super stoked. Like, oh, I found this.
Yeah, my kid would have totally did. He picks up stuff off the street all the time.
They always do. Right. Like, oh, it's for my collection. I'm like, oh my God. Yeah. What are we collecting?
Well, you get disinfected in the house. Everybody has disinfectant now, just like hanging on the wall. Well, hopefully you see them back behind you in that little cave someday.
No, we got to leave him there though, because we're like, it's our experiment now.
Yeah. Oh, I love it.
How long's the stick man going to be there? So if you come to Vancouver, we'll introduce you to the stick man.
Put a GPS marker on there and then send it to me whenever I go and I can find it.
So yeah.
Well, I'm gonna let you go here because this is great, and this is definitely. I think it might be. I have another podcast this week, and I'm wondering if it's going to go over my limit. Maybe it's time for me to up my limit for the podcasting hosting software that I have, because you can only allow so many gigabytes or whatever per month per my subscription rate. And I told this to Tucker the other day too. It's like I started it small because I don't want to push it, and I just want to see where it's going. But I think I'm really enjoying this, and if I can do one podcast a week, it's.
What are you doing Thursday night?
I have plans.
Oh,
we're doing a staycation, actually, in town here. Yeah, we're staying at. Don't tell my kids. We're surprising them. We're taking them out of school tomorrow, early afternoon, and we're taking them down to the Sheraton Cavalier for 2 nights, and we're going to. Tonight is Tuesday night. Yeah. For people in the future. Hi. So and there's water slides and stuff like that downtown. So we're gonna take them water sliding for a couple of days. So we're spending Wednesday and Thursday night away. We also have hockey. We happen to have hockey practice on Thursday night as well, which cuts into his water sliding time, which I think, well, whatever, he's gonna have to deal with it because I'm coaching, so I have to go. But anyways,
oh, you're the coach. I love that so much.
Of course I am. Why wouldn't I be? I've actually usually the assistant coach, but this year I decided to be the head coach. Well, I didn't. Oh,
you'd be such a good coach.
Well, I love it. I just head coaching is a little different because you have to do the coaching plan and make sure everybody's kind of on board, and it's a little bit different focus. I like being an assistant coach because you're more like a drill sergeant, hey, barking at the kids, yelling at them, because like boys, they love that. People say, why are you yelling at them? Because they love it and they just think it's awesome because they don't want to know. They want to know where to go, what they're supposed to do. Yeah, and it's like, hey, work harder, go over here, go over there, listen to the coach. So now your head coach, you kind of have to rein it in a bit and be sort of a more mature person.
Not as fun.
Which isn't as fun, but anyways, I love coaching. It's a joy for sure. I've actually, because I was part of the kids club, I still am, but Kids in
Yeah,
Club
was he
actually
the
took a lot of my
president?
time. Yeah, last year I was, and it takes a lot of your time, Kids in Club president. So I would not have been a good head coach because you can't really skip meetings. Although as past president, you can skip all the meetings you want. They can't do a damn thing about you, and you're on exec, and they can't kick you out because
Yeah, you got stuff to do.
I'm done.
You already did your time.
So, anyways, what are you doing Thursday night?
I'm teaching Thursday night.
Okay.
So I want to try to get you.
Okay. Let's find a
I'd
time.
love it if you could. Yeah, I'd love it if you could jump in there and talk about your guest speak for a little bit there.
Sure, I can do that for sure. Yeah.
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 We'll set it up sometime.
Okay. Well, I'll have this thing posted here pretty quick, and then I'll let you know. And if you have any second thoughts about anything you say here, I'll tell this to all my guests. If you have any second thoughts, let me know. I don't mind cutting stuff. I don't think you would, but if you kind of have any second thoughts, let me know, and I just cut it out. I'm not a journalist. I'm a friend, and just having conversations with people and sharing them. That's all I'm doing. But I'm not a journalist. I'm not here to tell the truth. I'm here to have a good time.
Well, I hope you had a good time. I hope I was an entertaining guest for you.
Oh, you're my longest guest, and I love it. It's so good. So good. We'll do this again.
How long have we been talking?
Well, it's been over an hour and a half.
Oh my God. You're cutting this though. Like you're going to not make it an hour and a half podcast, are you?
Why not? It's been great.
Oh, okay.
We had nonstop awesomeness. Well, this last little bit, we've been rambling on quite a bit.
I know, it's because
I think a lot of our guests are cut off by now, so.
Yeah. But no, that's because we haven't seen each other in like years. And so now I'm just curious, right?
I know.
So,
I know. We're going to do this again. We'll wait a few months into the new year, so we'll do it again, though, because I want to catch up with you again. Maybe even a short look, because I can do as long as I want. We can just have a 15-minute conversation. Not that we've ever had a 15-minute conversation, but we could if that's all we want to do, right? So.
Yeah.
Or you start your own and let me know, and I'll jump in.
Yeah, I will.
You interview me.
Yeah. I will interview you.
Oh, shit. Now I'm in trouble. Okay, so.
Boy Doubler. Say anything.
Take care. We'll be in touch. It's great seeing you. You look wonderful.
It's good to see you too. So do you,
haven't
buddy.
Changed. Well, yeah.
No, for real. Your hair looks fantastic.
Well, I know that. Well, it's got grayer too. A little more gray. My wife used to pick out the gray hairs, hey.
Yeah, she can't do that anymore because then you'll be bald.
And I get haircuts, and I love my hairdresser. My stylist, but she gives me a black thing all the time. So my hair comes down. All I see is my white hairs on my little on my belly there. I'm like, fuck, can you get like a gray colored one or a white colored one? No, she always has a black one. So
oh my gosh, so funny.
Give her shit.
Yeah.
Anyways, great seeing you. Love you.
Great seeing you too, buddy. Love you too.
And we'll be in touch.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, stop recording now.